Morning Express is where you're at, and thank you for staying with us. And now we're on the lifestyle session, where today we're talking about test tube babies. And of course, this is a debate that we have because it is a social issue. We must ask ourselves the question, are we getting to a point where we actually play God? And to what extent do we accept this? And we do know that we have some legislators who are pushing for the bill to be passed, whereby it is made very structured and we have the legal backing. I think we had one of them, I think it was Millie who, no, it was Joyce Lay, sorry, who went through the process. But after that, she discovered that she had to go to court and adopt her own baby. Of course, these are some of the issues that one faces and is left with very many questions. And joining me in the studio is Professor Koigi Kamau. Professor Koigi Kamau is a researcher on reproductive health. And we also have Pastor Tony Kema, who is a senior pastor in KAG Parklands. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you, man.
And I'll possibly start with you, Professor Koigi Kamau, because I know that's the area which you work. And you can maybe start by letting us know, what is the procedure when it comes to actually having a test tube baby?
Wow. Test tube babies, the technology was evolved in 1978 as a solution towards infertility. Fertility appears to be a universal desire in this world, particularly in a country like this. So if a woman can't get pregnant, then they can do anything to achieve the pregnancy state. The causes can be either due to the man or the woman, or both. And it started with problems with fallopian tubes, which are essential for both transport of the egg, the sperm, and the fertilized egg towards the uterus after fertilization. And if it is destroyed, then there is no way fertilization can occur, and there's no way pregnancy can occur in the uterus. So the basic principle was that if you can achieve the process of getting the egg from the ovary, fertilize it in the laboratory, then you can put it through the cervix into the uterus, and it continues to grow as a normal pregnancy. So this is the basic principle that is used in test tube baby technology.
So in this particular procedure, just to understand clearly, does the egg and the sperm, are they mixed in a test tube and then reintroduced to the womb?
Well, test tube is the name that was given because laboratories and test tubes are associated together. It is not really a test tube. It's actually petri dishes in media where they can grow. The sperms are alive, the eggs are alive, they must feed, they must have oxygen, all right? And they are put together in the petri dishes, and then fertilization occurs. Technology has evolved further, such that you can actually inject the sperm, which is much, much smaller, into the bigger egg, and that enhances rapid fertilization. And then you can observe under the microscope, through incubation process, the eggs dividing. And when they divide, then we know they are good eggs, and then they can be transferred into the woman.
Now, once that has been done, is it reintroduced back into the woman? At what stage is that done?
Now, there are various stages, but when it is actually dividing, after 48 hours to 5 days, all right, it can be reintroduced through the cervix. The cervix is the neck of the womb, right into the uterus. The process is a little bit more complex because the uterus must also be prepared to receive. So the process of the technology actually simulates the normal process that occurs under natural conditions. So you prepare the uterus, you produce the eggs, prepare the uterus, fertilize, and then transfer the fertilized eggs, which are called embryos, into the uterine cavity.
Okay, Thank you very much. And just to remind you at home, if you'd like to participate in this debate, you're free to do that. We're talking about test tube babies and whether we are getting to a point where we actually play God. The phone lines are going to be open and they'll be displayed on your screen. You can also tweet, and the Twitter handle is @MichaelG.Gitonga. Would like to hear your comments, your sentiments. Would you go for a test tube baby? Do you feel that maybe God already provided a biological way for you to have a child, and this would be humans trying to help God in his process? So would like you to join in the debate and do let us know what your sentiments are. And at this point, I'll bring in Pastor Tony Kema, who is the senior pastor for KAG Parklands. Now, Pastor Tony Kema, God has already given us a natural process to have children. Is human science trying to play God?
I think it's important for us to, first of all, draw lines. And the knowledge that Professor has, God gave him the ability
Correct.
to do what he does, to help humanity go through or, alleviate suffering in humanity. And as I was reading through this whole process, I think before we demonize the whole process, it's important for us to say that as I was reading, the first thing that jumps to you, as a layman, is artificial insemination.
Right.
And for us, when you hear artificial insemination, you assume ni ng'ombe.
Yeah, it's how
we assume binadamu ni ng'ombe. So you assume that it's a process that they do with cows that they're going to do with people. You get what I'm saying? Where you're basically cloning. You want a certain breed of human beings, so you clone.
Right.
But as I continued to read further, I realized that there was a difference, where that process is done, inside the uterus or the neck, as he called it. That's one. And then there is
intravenous,
in vitro insemination, where now it's done outside the human body. And I want to say this, that Mike, you need to be a parent to understand the joy of holding your own. And one of the greatest problems in human traffic is children. People steal children right, left, and center. And it's, the agony of you losing a child and the other person's agony of desiring to hold one of their own. And I think medicine, science, and God is synonymous. I don't think we have science here and God here. Science actually eventually proves the existence of God, because you need to prove the existence of God through science. And as you continue reading books and and look through and research, you find that science actually complements the scriptures. But I want to say this. Psalms 127 and verse 3, the Bible says that children are a gift from the Lord. A productive womb is the Lord's reward. So there is no guarantee, and I'm sure Professor will attest to this, there is no guarantee that just because that embryo has been fertilized outside, that when it's put in, it shall grow. There are no guarantees. It's still a 50-50. They are not God. It is God who gives life. So there are no guarantees.
So for it to be successful, God is probably...
Exactly. And I want to say this, that the demon in this process is not the science, is the legislation that governs the science. That's where the demon is.
Okay, Professor, I'll bring in at this point, and you can let us know. I'm sure you're well versed with where we are as a country in terms of having this legislation, having the process done. Because one, it is very expensive. Two, there is very little access for it. How far have we gone in terms of having that, process made possible for the common mwananchi?
Let me take you a little bit back to 2007, when I was appointed by the Minister for Health, Mrs. Ngilo, Honorable Ngilo, to lead a process that would come with a regulatory framework. And it never completed. I think elections came and many other things. We never completed it, but we did learn a lot on the area of need for regulatory framework. I think the issue is not the regulatory framework. It will be the content within the regulatory framework that ensures ethics that encompass the whole of the society. There's always give and take. The religious aspect, socio-cultural issues, there are scientific issues. There are also professional issues. For example, if we all said we are rich enough, we will never carry babies, all right? So we can have surrogates to carry for us. Now that would be wrong, clearly wrong, anywhere in the world, morally. All right? There has to be a reason why you have to undergo these processes. There has to be a reason why you're getting investigated for infertility. There has to be a reason why you have to have sperms donated. It is not a question of just saying, sperm bank, I want to withdraw. It has to be real reason behind it. And this must be documented. I think in that context, then the regulatory framework and the law are the right thing, for as long as they're put within the right socio-cultural context, scientific content, political content, and everything. So I think that is the right direction. We will be ahead of very many countries in this world, all right? That we wanted to be ahead of this in this area as early as 1987, so that we are governed by a complete regulatory framework that ensures that ethics, in particular ethics, are observed.
All right. Talking about ethics and whether they are observed, my question here would be, given that you're taking the sperm and the egg and, whether in or out of the body, are there regulations that follow up to see, for instance, if it's the man who's not able to give a sperm, how do you go about, going to the sperm bank, and how do you withdraw? Who's the father of this child?
Well, the father is, if you're talking about a sperm bank, the father will not be the biological father. The father will be the
donor.
The husband to the spouse.
To the spouse.
Yes, that's right. You're solving a problem. It's a social problem. It's a major problem. All right? That if you cannot sire in this country, you are not recognized anywhere. And it's not only in this country, it is in the world. I'm not very good. I think I'm also biblical significantly. Hannah is an example of a person who suffered a lot. All right? I've been interested in infertility in the Bible because it's part of the subject.
That's true.
All right? Now, the issue with the society is not where the baby comes. It's not how you are treated. The society wants to see you as, in this country we say Baba so-and-so. So if you're my father, you're Baba Koigi, who is me. And that's what the society wants. We have to fulfill certain societal obligations, certain fulfillments in life. And one of the major ones, like Pastor said, happens to be fertility. All right? So if you do a semen analysis and find that there are no sperms, do we tell this man, go your way? All right? So there are ways to circumvent this legally. All right? Not to steal children, not to commit suicide. All right? Not good to, and drink yourself to death. All right? So we are solving a social problem because infertility is a biological problem that's manifested socially.
I think, Professor, and let me say kudos to medicine and this far science has done. But I think it's important for us to remember that the devil is in the details. And especially in the legislation, because when a man is, one of the factors of infertility is in the ejaculation. If there is not enough sperms, or the sperm count is low. There are sperms, yes, but the sperm count is low.
Correct.
So if that is the situation, then it will be a challenge for the man to sire. So it's not the fact that he doesn't have sperms, it's just that the sperm count is low. So in that process, then it makes moral sense or ethical sense for him to donate and science to find a sperm among whatever he has, whatever, and do the process. And that makes sense. But my problem will be if when we legislate this and it is out there, then it gets to a place where, number one, a lady can just walk in and say, the way you walk in and buy airtime, the way you walked in and nipatie hiyo tai. You get what I'm saying? How much is that shoe? Unapima kiatu. So it will get to a place where a lady can walk into the sperm bank, nasema, jamaa alikuwa mweupe, mweusi, mkubwa, mzungu, muhindi, alikuwa number 1 shule, he is a professor, unaekewa kwa unaekewa kwa nini, unapeleka hospitali, or you do whatever, then it's transported to whichever clinic you want, and shortly, voila, she's pregnant a few months later. I think we have to come to the place where we're saying, there has to be strict legislation. And let me say this, Mike and Professor, when it is said that Kenya is the 145th most corrupt country in the world, we are not being, we are not being framed. We are not being falsely accused. You get what I'm saying? So you can imagine, with the levels of corruption, then now you put such legislation in the hands of corrupt medical officers. Then what do you get what I'm saying? We have a moral situation. And that's what I'm saying. I think for me, the demon is in the details, in the sense that we have a whole generation of young people who don't believe in marriage.
Professor, as Pastor brings it out, is the medical profession looking into some of these social questions as they develop the science? Because you can be very tuned to making sure the science works, and we totally forget. And like Pastor rightly says, what stops a woman from walking into a sperm bank and ordering, just like you order, I want this yogurt as opposed to the other
chips
one.
na kuku.
Now, I think I want to go back and say that's why there's supposed to be a regulatory framework. Because when you have a regulatory framework, that is law. Then it guides the practice.
Is the medical profession ensuring that regulatory framework is there? Or are they just developing the science?
I think, Daktari, I like facing facts. Right now, 147 young people were killed in Garissa. Not because there was no framework for justice or for security, but some of those people walked through the borders that were not unmanned, were manned by police officers, armed, trained police officers, and they walked through. These are the same Kenyans. And so the question I would like to pose to Professor is, how do we guarantee more that is it even possible to guarantee that it won't get there?
Now, I think let me answer the question, because it's more or less the same. One, I think we do agree there has to be a regulatory framework.
Some guidelines.
Now, let's start by saying that we agree the science is important.
It's true.
All right? There's no question about that. Then the second one is that it has to be a regulatory framework. And within the regulatory framework, what you need is accountability. All right? When it is complete, all right, we shall be able to account for every egg, let alone every sperm donated, how it goes, where it goes. I think the bill does propose that you have the in vitro fertilization authority that is supposed to look after that. That's a whole arm of the government, all right? Like we have human embryo and fertilization authority in Europe, all right? So I think it's a good idea that we have a regulatory framework that is run through an authority that is independent, that will monitor the activities of IVF. There are many things I said that can go there in terms of corruption. For example, I said, you say you have no time to give birth babies, but you want babies, and you want to tell women to carry babies for you. All right? That's just one of the examples. All right? So the idea is to ensure that ethics are followed to the letter. All right? The authority should have the ability to give licenses, to renew licenses, to take people to court, to deregister, and so forth. So I think if you have looked at the bill, I don't think you have looked at it. All right? That is the core matter, that there is in vitro fertilization authority that will run these services, oversee, over and above the medical board.
But the test tube babies are already being done. It's already possible to get it. Yes, without the bill having been passed. So the question is, how do we ensure that that bill protects that? Yet it has not even been passed yet.
Now, there was, when we were starting these sciences, we asked a very important question. Do we start or wait for the bill? Which one comes first? And it is clear that the service required to start so that the country can see the necessity for the service. It's a very popular service because infertility is a major problem.
So is it being driven by the need or the fact that there is money that can be made
It's
out of it?
both, that's it, but the main thing is the need. We are talking about understanding how to treat infertility beyond the levels that have been there hitherto. All right? Okay? Going beyond, because that's the problem. The biggest task is actually to have this thing known all over the country. As we are trying us at the university, we are already taking strategies to ensure that people understand more about fertility treatment. All right? All over the world is a major problem. But I think we are taking the right direction.
Okay. Pastor, one of the things that drives this need for test tube babies is probably a cultural pressure. I think I was listening to, and I was reading some of the articles written by Joyce Lay and Millie Adhiambo, who I must say at this point, we tried to get them into the studio so that we can get their story and also find out the drive behind, pushing this. Because I'm sure a woman's perspective of this pressure, social pressure to have children, and the social drive, mbona hauna watoto? When are the children coming? When are you giving birth to me now, culturally, if you're named after the child? What would you say generally in society that we need to do to ease this pressure on women who may not be able to, or men, or couples who are not able to get children, given that it may drive them to do this not because they really want the children or are able, but because they have to fit in society?
I think it's important, Mike, to say that there are things that, there are battles you can win, but there are battles I don't think will win. Throughout generations, I don't think this will change. And it's not a matter of wealth or education, because it doesn't matter how much money you have or how educated you are. When you get to the place where you are married and you don't have children, it goes back to default, to the core of who you are. And the desire to have children has driven people, and Professor will attest to it, have driven people to, broken marriages, suicide, drug abuse, excessive drinking, just throwing away any form of restraint because they feel like they are worthless. And I want to say this, Mike, that the demon here is not in the science. And I want to repeat and say, Professor, kudos for the research that was done, and for the minds that came together in 1978 and put this thing together. I think it's an amazing thing in the context of marriage. When a married couple has been struggling with that element, and for whatever the reason, whether it is the husband or the wife who are facing this, I don't think that's the problem. The problem is in the legislation. The problem is, how will this thing be rolled out? As he said, it is both the benefit of the couple to get a baby, but it's also driven financially. And I want to say this, the financial aspect tends to overtake every other aspect.
Correct.
Because right now in Mombasa, in Coast General, 2 children have died because
of the doctor's strike.
Because the nurses are saying they're underpaid. So I want us to look at the moral aspect, money versus life. If these people are at the point where they would rather children die because they are not paid, it's not that they are not being paid, is they don't feel like they are being paid their worth. And so the only way to untwist the government is for children to die. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
So are these the same people that we want to put this legislation in their hands? Sincerely speaking.
All right.
I don't think it is
We'll
right.
take a call from Ismail in Nairobi. Thank you for calling, Ismail. To your question or comment.
This is Ismail Omar. I'm calling from Nairobi. I'd just like to say that IVF helps patients who will be otherwise unable to conceive. And I think the legislation that is already in the Senate will provide for actually this legislation to be active, or rather to be enacted, so that more women can be able to make choices about their body. Of course, you also need to understand that some of the advantages also will include, or rather this service will be advantageous for older patients. For instance, patients with a low ovarian reserve. Apart from also tackling issues to do with male infertility, it also, there's something called polycystic ovary syndrome, and I think maybe the doctor can talk about it, which is a common condition in which there is a hormone imbalance leading to irregular menstrual cycle. So I think IVF has proved very successful in patients with the polycystic ovary syndrome. And I think another advantage will also be on things to do with endometriosis, where patients with endometriosis, where parts of the womb lining grow outside the womb, may like to try IVF, as it has proved successful in this group. And finally, there's what you call premature ovarian failure, and women with premature ovarian failure or menopause can have IVF treatment using donor eggs, which is typically has high success rate. So finally, as I conclude, I'd like to say it has been used for a long time and has a safe track record.
All right.
IVF is more successful than IUI and other forms of assisted reproductive technology. So the other gentleman who is saying that it's something that you can just go and buy in a shop, I think there are limitations, and even in the current bill that is in the Senate, there are limitations to who can be able to get this service, on which grounds, and other limitations. So it is not just something that will not be guarded.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ismail. We also have a call from Sarah in Eldoret. Thank you for calling, Sarah, to your comment or question. Sarah? Do we have Sarah?
Hello, habari ya asubuhi.
Yes, Sarah.
Habari ya asubuhi.
Mzuri kabisa, Sarah.
Mimi naitwa Sarah kutoka Eldoret. Na mtoto mmoja na miaka 20 na kuna wakati nenda
Sarah, sikusikii vizuri. Hebu ongea kwa sauti tafadhali.
Nasema. Na mtoto ana miaka 24. Na nikaelezewa kwamba niende nifanyiwe FHT. Nikafanya referral, lakini bahati mbaya walipofanya operation uzazi mmoja ubao umeharibika. Kama na daktari, kama wakati zataka hiyo shughuli kufanya upasuaji na pesa ngapi, naweza kuitaka kwa muda wote kwa kiasi hicho.
Okay, asante.
Kwa boss, naona kuliko ni boss, hapo hiyo inaweza kusaidia.
Okay. Sawa, asante Sarah. All right, and we'll start maybe with Ismail's concerns, and he's brought in quite a number of medical conditions, I assume, for a layman like me, that this IVF can help out. But he also mentions that there are limitations as to who has access to this particular kind of intervention by the medical practitioners. Is this true? Are there limitations, or can anybody just walk in and have the procedure done?
Well, I think I want to put it in another way. There are indications. There has to be indications, reasons that deserve the intervention. All right? So they are not called limitations. They are indications. And in fact, what he has said is talked about the tubal factor, that the fallopian tubes is the commonest problem. Either due to infections or due to endometriosis. He talked about endometriosis. I think it's a person is very well informed. Polycystic ovaries, where you have failed through stimulation, and or premature ovarian failure, where you require donor eggs. All right, you can get donor eggs, all right, and you carry the baby. Now, so those are methods that there are some of the indications, reasons.
Okay, since we're dealing more with this, the moral question rather than the scientific, the question is it possible for anybody to just walk in and have this procedure done, or are there certain rules and regulations that you need to follow to ensure that it's not just even counseling?
Yes. So you cannot just walk in and have it, all right? It is immoral to do that. This is why you have to have a reason. And in fact, let me go back to the bill and the legislation. This is the whole purpose, so that the whole procedure is not misused. Right?
But as you said, Daktari, it is available currently before the bill. What is driving its availability? Is it the money aspect?
No, this is providing a solution to a problem that is long-lasting, all right? So we would like the service to be accessible to very many people.
Which it is not.
Which is not yet.
Especially because of cost.
Because of cost. But you see, we also would like the government to come in. If you go to some countries, like Denmark and others, they do offer a free service for several cycles. I think like Denmark was 3. I was there recently. 3 cycles. So you can try 3 times without pay, all right? Now, if we can have that in this country, then very many people would benefit, because many people are suffering and they have no idea where to get the services, or even if they know, they can't afford. In terms of expense, it is probably not the profit. It is the fact that the medicines that are used are very, very, very expensive, all right? Unless they're subsidized, then the ordinary man will never get the service. I think this is where registration becomes important, because it increases the access to a service that is hitherto inaccessible to very many people. All right, it also enhances training, because there's the aspect of training. All right? We need to train more people in this area so that we can have satellite area clinics, even within the government hospitals, where cost can be reduced,
can be
we can have
down.
cost sharing, yes.
Okay, Pastor, like I'd said earlier, it's driven by a societal pressure.
Yes.
And a need. How do we ensure, or how do we make sure that our brothers and sisters are not under so much pressure to a point where they're forced to do this just to fit?
I think, number one, the fact, as it should be informed by, what did you call it? There's a word he used, that they're not challenges, they're not problems, you know.
Indications.
The indications.
So the indications should be the ones that should be legislated. Number one, it is important that you can't just walk in. You get what I'm saying? And just get one. There needs to have been done certain tests, and those tests should indicate a certain, you know, level of incapacitation to get a child. But I want to, coming back to the moral aspect, I want to say, is it possible then in this legislation that a single woman can walk in to an IVF clinic and say that I have desired a child, I have not gotten somebody to marry me?
Or
but
maybe I'm not interested.
Regardless. I am not interested, or I have not found anyone to marry me, and I want a baby. You know, she can say she's as stressed as a married one. And so the question would be, when she, would a person
Pastor,
like that...
Would that be an issue if somebody actually just wanted a baby on her own?
No, I don't think that should be right. That's morally wrong. I don't know whether I should say it in Swahili.
On what grounds?
I think, first of all, children should be born in a framework of marriage. So where they have a father and a mother. That's an ideal situation.
One might argue and say there's a father figure.
I know, you know, people die, get into accident, divorce situations, those ones. But when it is out of choice, when it is elective, I think it is wrong. Not I think, I believe it is wrong. But I also want to say this. The people who donate sperms, who are those people who donate sperms? Is it just somebody, you know, some guy walks into a clinic and says, I want to, you know, out of the desire to help humanity, nataka kutoa mbegu.
Okay, I think I'll take two calls first, then we'll come back. Kimani in pipeline. Yes, Kimani, thank you for calling. Your comment or your question?
Nauliza. Nilikuwa nataka kusema lazima regulations ziwe vizuri. Kwa sababu naona hata siku hizi like women wakati when they are pregnant. Unaweza ona instead ya kwenda to get no delivery unapata wanaenda kufanya cesarean.
Okay.
Sasa unaona lazima kuwe na regulation nzuri sana.
Okay.
Kwa sababu unapata good woman who can go to a normal delivery anaenda upande wa kufanya cesarean. Sasa hiyo ningependa ifanywe regulation nzuri.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sawa, asante sana Kimani, saying that there are issues there with regulation. We'll go to Mike in Kiambu. Morning, Mike, and thank you for calling. To your comments.
Yes.
Yes, Mike.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the IVF. I wanted to ask the doctor. When we have, I know a person with PCOS, and once they do the egg retrieval, they have a lot of eggs that are produced. Now my question is, how do you ensure the doctors who are harvesting the eggs, they do not use some of the eggs to give it to some other people or benefit financially? Because I understand that there are very few embryologists in Kenya, and a lot of them are coming from overseas. And there's that egg trafficking stuff that goes on. So how do we trust the doctor that some of these eggs are not going to be used by other people or use them for financial gain?
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, sure.
Professor, yes, interesting question. Back again to the moral question. How do you ensure that they don't, sell these eggs? And the mother is not, the donors may not even be aware.
Now, the target is just to get about 10 eggs on average, because many eggs are not going to be good. And if you have extra good eggs, you can have them preserved, cryopreserved, all right, for use the next cycle, or if you fail, all right? Now, there are consents that are given, and the consents are very clear, that if I have excess eggs, I can donate to a needy person. If I have excess eggs, I want to.
The issue would not be if you're willing. The issue is
not the willing of the lady.
Yeah, the question is how do we ensure that this doctor does not harvest more than he needs and sell them?
No, you must harvest all of them. So I'm giving you how they are dispersed, the process. So I think I'm answering the question. So unless, let me put it simply, unless the consent is given to use those eggs to donate to somebody else.
It's not supposed to be done.
It is not supposed to be done. Now,
I'll have to cut you short because of time. And what I'd want to get maybe from Pastor is your closing comments, just generally your closing comments on this whole IVF thing.
I think, Mike, there's great potential to be abused. The potential to abuse this process is unimaginable. But of course, the benefits also are out of this world, so to say. But for me, the challenge would be the moral aspect. For these sperms that are donated, who donates them? And when they are donated, can just somebody walk in and, and because they can afford it, because it's quite an expensive process, get an egg, and get the egg fertilized. So it's actually possible to get into a situation where the egg does not belong to the carrier, and the sperm So whose mother is this and whose father is this? You know, those are critical issues that I think we need to answer.
They must be addressed.
And I know in the social circles, they might be saying, you know what, the father is not necessarily the biological one, is the one who raises the child up. But you know what, I want to know who my father is, my biological father is. Whether he took part, whether he was a thug, whether he killed, I want to know who my father is.
All right.
And we
Thank
find
you.
identity there.
Professor, closing comments.
No,
very
the
briefly.
closing comment is that I think the bottom line is that there's an agreement that this is an important service to the community that solves some problems. Now, I want to say that I have access to the bill, and I think it's clearly stated that it is dealing with couples with problems in having children.
So that needs to be very clear.
And the same concern that pastor have, we all have them, all right, and the society have them. But that is the same reason why the bill and the authority are being
put
created.
in place. All right, sorry, gentlemen, I'll have to cut you short there. We're really out of time. For you at home, thank you so much for being with us right here on Morning Express. It's been a pleasure hosting you. I'll take this opportunity to wish you all a fantastic and a wonderful day. Do join me tomorrow bright and early on Morning Express. Have a good day.